People think, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And it's legit.
Fool me 4 times.
Right, fool me 4 times.
Fool me over and over.
I'm moving to Kansas City.
Where I'm going to go pay for the Chiefs.
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. Kirk, thank you for sitting down with us.
I'm glad to be here. I have seen past podcasts, and I was very interested when you got a hold of me.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. It's great to speak with somebody who's been on the scene locally for such a long time with the Eagle and now with the Business Journal. So it's a real treat to get to sit with you.
It's hard to believe it's been 40 years for me. I'm 59 years old, and I got into this when I was 18. It's funny that somebody who hired me, you've had on the podcast, and then I've hired somebody else who's been on your podcast, Bob Lutz, Taylor Eldridge. So kind of continuing this, I guess.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So you started at the Eagle in 1988, correct?
Full-time in 88. Bob Lutz hired me as what we called a freelancer or a stringer in 1984 to cover high school games for him. And so I did that for 4 years while I was in college at Wichita State, and then got hired full-time after I graduated.
Do you recall, what were the big news stories in the city around that time?
News stories. I was in sports, so I didn't always pay a lot of attention to the news side.
Yeah.
Well, in sports, losing the Shocker football program in 1986 was a big thing. I was a student at the time, and I remember Tom Shine was the beat writer at that point. He was busy covering football and said, hey, the Shocker basketball team is going down to Lafayette, Louisiana to play a road game. Can you fly down there? And so they sent me a moment's notice when the football program was being eliminated. I was covering the basketball game the next night. Other stories in that time, Kellogg, you guys are too young to remember when Kellogg was stopped at every city block in downtown. They said we're going to do a Kellogg flyover. That was a huge deal. We all take that for granted now.
What was the speed limit?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you couldn't get going more than 30 miles an hour because you couldn't make it all through all green lights. You'd have to stop at some point, so you couldn't get going very fast at all.
Huh.
I was trying to think of other stories in the 80s. BTK was certainly still a story in the 80s. I think he kind of fell off the radar for a while in the mid 80s. We didn't quite know where he was. It took us until 2003 to realize not only was he alive, but he was still around. He wasn't in prison. He wasn't dead. And then, of course, those 2 years where the search for him resumed, that was pretty interesting.
What a crazy time.
I remember being a junior high school student, and there were a lot of the murders going on around that time. And really, I would come home after school to an empty house. My mother was a teacher, and she was still at school. I would come home to an empty house, not being too comfortable in a house by myself. I remember I'd go out to shoot baskets if the weather was decent at all, and didn't want to be in the house by myself at that point after school.
Wow. Just the fear, the grip that had on Wichita is just terrible.
It's pretty amazing. And you've had Susan Peters on, so you've had somebody who experienced it in terms of how the news gathering went. And I can remember in 2003 to 2005 when they finally caught him, the electricity around a newsroom at that point is pretty amazing. He sent us something, or they were tracking down a lead, and it's pretty energetic around there.
Was that just a stop what you're doing type of moment when they'd send something?
Well, and it's interesting in what was happening in the newsroom at that point. It's not like the person who got the tip or the thing in the mail was going around announcing it to everybody. You'd go talk to your editors, and then you would kind of feel a buzz going on. Hey, is something going on over there at the crime and safety team? Do they have a new piece of information? What are they working on? So that's how you kind of found out. You'd go over and talk to somebody like Hearst Laviana, who was one of the main reporters in the BTK days, and he would say, yeah, we got this. And it was, very interesting.
Wow. I was going to ask you what it was like in the early 2000s being in the news, because in 2001, you had the Carr brothers killings.
Yeah.
And then in 2004, BTK resurfaces. What a wild time to be at the Eagle.
I remember the car killings because they were actually caught in an apartment complex that kind of backed up against my wife and I's home. So when that happened that morning, I can remember when they were caught, it was live on, I think it was Channel 12 that we were watching that morning before we went to work. And it was like, oh man, this is right over our shoulder. And that was just horrifying. I lived blocks away from where one of the Shocker baseball player, Andy Schreiber, was abducted. He was the one before the cars, before the shootings of the four in 2000, and I knew him from covering the Shocker baseball team back then. Pretty horrifying time.
What happened with that?
He was abducted at. I think it was a 7-Eleven there at 21st and Woodlawn on the northwest corner. I hope I get my facts straight. He was abducted. He was assaulted. He was robbed, but he was spared. He didn't. He obviously lived through it, and was a witness later, I guess.
Wow.
By the Carr brothers?
Yeah, by the Carr
Whoa.
brothers. Yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah. The four killings and the attempted murder were not in their first. They had done other stuff. Yeah.
Wow, I had never heard of that.
Yeah.
And I also found out not too long ago, because it was 25 years since the killing, so the news resurfaced. There were a group called the Forgotten Four. There was a quadruple murder 8 days before the Carr brothers killings.
Yeah, and I the facts are going to escape me, but they were murdered by somebody they knew, which is what made it a little different. It was around 9th and Hillside, a little bit farther north on Hillside. They were in a home. I believe it was a gathering or a party, and someone came in and opened fire. And they're called the Forgotten Four because it was in the headlines. It was on the news for days in front of the Carr murders. But then when the Carrs abducted those 4 or 5, that kind of took precedence because it was a random crime. And I think you can make the case the victims were white. I think that probably makes a difference in the news coverage, although we'd like to think it doesn't. But I think it probably did. And they didn't know that they're assailants. So I think that made it a little different in this case.
That's amazing. Amazing time where Wichita, a city like Wichita can have basically back-to-back quadruple homicides in a week and a half span.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So from there, you spent 17 years as a sports editor?
I did. I started in 1988 as a lowly sports copy editor, just editing copy and making sure that headlines fit and things like that, and things were spelled right. And 3 years later, I became a sports writer. I was covering high school sports and covering the minor league baseball team, which back then was a Padres affiliate, in the summers. And then I became the Shocker beat writer for 4 years in the late 90s. I always like to joke with Paul Solentrop or Taylor Eldridge. I was covering the bad days of Shocker basketball. I covered the last year of Scott Thompson. That team went 8-21, which by winning percentage was the worst team in Shocker history. There were guys on that team you really wondered, how is he in Division I basketball? But I will say this about those guys on that team. They never shied away from a microphone when I was asking them questions. They never said, just get the hell out of here. It's our 10th straight loss. I don't want to talk to you. They always held their heads high, and I give them a lot of respect for that. Darren Miller, who's here in town from Wellington, he is with AT&T now and doing well. He and I joke about that whenever we get together. That was a really bad team, but they all held together and they stayed together. And then I covered the first 3 years of Randy Smithson, the former Shocker who came back, and his dad coached here, and then he became the coach. Had marginal success, never came close to getting to the NCAA tournament or anything. Decent teams. They had Maurice Evans and Jason Perez, 2 pretty good players, but never a lot of success. And so the Shockers got good again after I became sports editor, not because I became sports editor, But after I became sports editor, the beat writers who followed me had some better teams to cover. Yeah, I was sports editor from 2000 to 2017. And if you think about those years, what happened in Wichita sports, what happened at KU sports, K-State football, just a lot of great things happening. And at my heart, I love putting a newspaper together every day. So I'm kind of I'm a dinosaur now. I admit that. It's not as much fun to hit a button and a story appears on a website. That's not as much fun as opening up your paper the next morning and a really big news of a sports event has been covered well by a game story, a columnist, maybe a sidebar. You've got a cute headline that kind of tells a story and attracts a reader. To me, that was a lot of fun of newspapering, as I call it.
Yeah, the Eagle used to have, like when WSU won a tournament game or KU won a tournament game, they'd have a full page of an image of a player during the game. And I remember cutting those out and taping them up on my bedroom wall as a kid.
We did that, and we really went after it hard 2013, 2014 when they started 34-0. Was it 30? I guess 35 after the first round win. We were doing a photo page out of every game, and I just kind of realized that, boy, if 10-year-old Kirk, 20 years earlier had been saving these, it'd been all over my wall. It'd been all over my wall of my bedroom at home.
So were you were covering K-State football like during the Michael Bishop all those years?
Yeah, we covered. We had a beat writer in Manhattan. All
Snyder
those years.
heyday, kind of.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I was not sports editor during the early Snyder days of getting respectable, getting nationally known. But then in 2003, when they went to Arrowhead and beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, we were all over that. And yeah, it was a fun era for K-State football, kind of like what Indiana is experiencing now. They're experiencing a national championship, which is different, but K-State had, decades of prolonged success that none of us who lived through K-State football of the 1980s or even earlier could ever imagine. And I'm no K-Stater, and I know K-State friends who live and die with every game they play. But imagining what they've done over the past 30, 35 years is just amazing. If Indiana has that type of sustained success, that's great, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't know.
Cignetti's not going to coach forever.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's a great thing for college football because it opens the door for other programs thinking, why not us?
Because Indiana is such a K-State, KU level program before this rise. It is kind of like, this can happen anywhere if you get the right guy.
Right, yeah. I'm more of a KU fan. I can admit that now that I'm not sports editor when I said we tried to play it down the middle all the time between KU and K-State. And especially since my daughter ended up going to school at KU. But if KU football can ever sustain that kind of success, I think that would be remarkable as well. They seem like they're on the cusp every now and then. They've got a new stadium to
You're optimistic.
It's all about NIL these days. Can you put the right roster together? And that's a year by year thing now. It's not a 4-year thing when I was in school or when you guys were in school even.
Yeah, having Mark Cuban and as well as many others donating to your NIL program at Indiana helps out.
Yeah,
but
right.
It opens the door for teams like KU and K-State. It's like, well, we might be one coach away or one transfer portal class away. You know, it's like, man.
David Booth gave $300 million to the KU athletic department, not the University of Kansas, to the KU athletic department.
Unbelievable.
And it's remarkable that it takes something like that, and you're not necessarily that unique anymore when you do something like that. You're
Come on, Charles.
Trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
Come on, Charles. We're hoping for you. Or Chase, somebody.
Yeah. That would be interesting. I would love to see Shocker basketball get to that type of success again.
What were some of your favorite sports stories to cover during your time? And were there any underrated ones that stick out to you that you don't think got the attention?
I always enjoyed telling the stories either as a reporter or as a sports editor that weren't being told. When a team is going well, you've got all 3 TV stations there. You've got scores of reporters there. You've got the national media coming in. But it's finding the stories that maybe there's not a success with this team. One of my favorite stories of all time was when I was the high school beat writer, and the Southeast girls basketball team had lost something like 55 games in a row. Now, that's more than 2 seasons in a row. And so it was tournament week. You remember how tournament week works in the midseason, where they go up to Newton to play in a tournament. And they lost their first 2 games of the tournament, obviously, because they weren't any good. But here they are in the 7th place game against West High School, Wichita West, who was also winless that year. And so I would never cover a 7th place game in a girls' midseason tournament, except I thought this might be their best chance for a victory. Southeast hasn't won in 2 years. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get up there and see if this turns into a good story. At the very least, a winless team's going to win a basketball game. But West had won some games the year before. Well, darned if Southeast did not just win. They won on a last-second shot. They took a shot. They got a rebound. This girl who wasn't, none of the players in Southeast were very good, but she just kind of turns around and throws it up off the backboard. It goes in at the buzzer. And they celebrate like they've just won the state tournament. And so I called back to the sports desk. The guys are getting ready to put the paper together that night. And I said, I know this game doesn't mean anything, but they broke like a 55-game losing streak, and I'd really like to write a little extra on it. And so I talked to them. I talked to parents. I talked to the coach who I don't think he had won a game yet at Southeast High. And it turned into one of those stories that I hope the reader the next day remembers. I know I'll remember it. I hope the kids remember it. And it's just those kinds of stories that I really like telling, whether I'm the reporter or I'm the editor reading the copy when it comes back to me. Let's tell those stories that a reader might not expect in their paper the next day. Those mean the most to me.
That's great.
That is great. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah. Southeast, Ashley Ewell. I don't know what Ashley Ewell is doing these days, but she's the one who made the bucket at the buzzer. And how I remember that 30 years later, I do not know.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. When journalism began to evolve digitally, what was there resistance in the newsroom? Was there resistance in the newsroom? And how did you personally evolve with that?
Yes, there was. I don't know if it was resistance. I think there was some reluctance. I think there was some naivete to how we were going to present our product on the internet. Newspapers at that point, they assigned one person to be the webmaster. That person, I'm pretty sure this is the case, their sole job was to put stories on the internet, but not immediately, not when the story's ready. It's after it had been prepared for the newspaper. So it'd be, for the news operation, it'd be in the evening. For the sports side of the operation, it'd be late at night, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, when you take those sports stories and get it online. And it's just like we're fulfilling a duty. It's not like we realize that this is our future. The other big mistake, not made by the newsroom, but made by the powers that be, is not to charge for that content initially. We didn't charge for reading stories at Kansas.com for years. And no major outlets did. That's just the way it was done. It was, if you read our content, we'll have advertisers on the page. That'll be our revenue. It didn't work that way. And then when we all decided to start charging is when we got in trouble, because people weren't used to being charged to read the news, and they didn't come to us. They didn't stay with us. They may still take the newspaper, but they weren't going to pay to read it online. And that was a fundamental error that all newspapers made in the late 90s and early 2000s. So it was reluctance. It was ambivalence. Newspapers have been around for 200 years. Nothing's going to stop us. Well, yeah, it stopped us pretty good.
Wow. How were you guys able to work through that?
By learning to adapt. I think that I can remember on high school football and basketball nights, we'd have one person dedicated to posting stories online, making sure that the stories were fresh, making sure that the scores list was fresh, because you'd have people who went to this game, but they also wanted to know about the score of that game. So just making sure everything was new and refreshed as often as possible. Do you have any water? I left a bottle. I left a bottle of water in the car, like an idiot. I was looking for your phone number. It's like, and then I forgot to get the water.
No problem.
But yeah, we didn't adapt quickly enough, and I think that's really hurt us over the years. But I think that just prolonged everything. I think, newspapers, once people realized that I can get the news right now, especially when it became apparent that I can get it on my phone, right in front of my hand, on my hand, right now, that was the end of newspapers as we knew them. Unfortunate, because like I told you, I really enjoy putting a newspaper together. At the Business Journal now, we put out a paper every Friday. And part of what I enjoy doing Wednesday morning of every week is making sure that paper looks as good as it possibly can. And I still take a lot of joy in that, even though it's a fraction of what we do each week now.
There you go.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
What is your, I don't know if you know this question, what's your percentage of paper to digital with your subscribers at the Business Journal currently? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I think the business journals, there's 40 business journals around the country owned by the same publication. I think we're a little bit different in that business leaders and the business community, middle managers and up, those are the people who read us mostly. And in many cases, they're a bunch of old men who still enjoy getting a paper. They may not get the daily paper every day anymore, but when the Business Journal arrives on their door in the mail on Fridays, they still enjoy reading that. And what we have found through surveys is the people who read the print product and the people who read the digital product are not the same people. There's less crossover than you would imagine. That said, I think digital subscribers probably outnumber print subscribers probably about 3-2. I think with daily newspapers, that's going to be a much higher number on the digital side. But we still have a good amount of people who want that print edition and don't read us digitally.
We get the print edition at the office.
Just one?
Just one. Just one.
So was it 34 years at the Eagle?
It was 34 years, including part-time work at the Eagle.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So after 34 years, you left the Eagle and went to the Wichita Business Journal.
Right. Yeah, I was laid off in 2018. Newspapers in 2016, 17, and 18, especially at the Eagle, there were just rolling layoffs. It might be 2 people here. It might be 4 people here. On my day, I can remember the editor coming in, and I was the community engagement editor at that time, which was what the editorial page editor was called at that point. I remember he came into my office, and he would often come in my office, have a seat, and we'd talk about, news events or what's going on, what I was writing about that day. Except that day he closed the door after him. I thought, he never closes the door. And that's when he proceeded to say, hey, we're laying you off. That day, there were 3 people laid off with a combined 99 years of Eagle experience.
Wow.
Think about that. Average 33 years of experience each. And that's pretty amazing for in one day to lose basically a century of institutional knowledge. But that's just kind of the way newspapers were going at that point.
Did you get to the Business Journal relatively quickly after that?
It's funny. Bill Roy, who was editor at the Business Journal for 20 years, he and I had worked together at the Eagle. We were friends. If you knew Bill at all, he's a cut-up, just one of the funniest people in Wichita. He texted me that day and said, hey, I think we need to have a conversation. So that was great to hear that, first of all, news travels fast in the journalism world. And secondly, hey, I may not be unemployed all that long. Now, I had a good severance package. It's not like I needed to get to work next week. when you're laid off after doing something for 34 years and you've never done anything else professionally in your life, you think, do I want to try something else? Do I want to try teaching? Do I want to try marketing? I think there's a little bit of indecision because if you've been in journalism all your life and never done anything else, you wonder, what else can I do? But as a wise man who had been laid off from the Eagle a year before told me that after that day, he said, if you're in journalism, you can do a lot of things that you don't realize you can do. You put words together well. You put sentences together well.
You know people.
You are able to critically think. So your avenues are open. But fortunately, Bill had come to me and said, hey, we need to have a conversation. And we did. I was looking at some other things. Do I want to try something else? But like I said, this is going to become a recurring theme. I like putting newspapers together and like reporting the news and editing the news. And eventually he had a spot for me as an associate editor. So I took about 6 weeks off. I joked that my lawn and my garden had never looked better because I had time to work on them. I paid some attention to them, but even my wife could tell after about 4 weeks. By that time, I knew I was going to be at the Business Journal, but I still had a couple weeks before I started, and she said, you need to get working. You're getting really bored. So if and when retirement comes, I'm not looking forward to it because I don't like being bored. I hope I find something.
Yeah.
So now being in the business side, Wichita is known for, the big four: Spirit, Textron, Coke, Cargill. How does reporting on a privately held giant like Coke differ from a public company like Textron or Spirit?
That's a good question. In many ways, they're not different at all because in many ways, even that public company like Spirit or Textron keeps things away from the media that they want to keep away from the media until they have to report it publicly. There is no greater friend to a business reporter, than the Security and Exchange Commission's website. That's where publicly traded companies have to go and report changes, earnings, things like that. We'll never know about Coke's earnings. I mean, unless they decide to divulge Coke's earnings or Cargill's earnings, we won't know an exact figure. We do with Textron, we do with Spirit and Boeing now, just because they have to make those things available to their shareholders. But so in many ways, it's not different, but in some ways, the absolute fundamentals eventually do get reported. And that took me a while to learn that as a business reporter, that there are some similarities, but there are some differences as well.
How much access, I know you kind of covered it there, how much access do reporters have when covering giants like that?
Again, for giants like that, the access is what the company wants you to be able to see. Now, the goal, of course, is to develop good sources within a company, whether that's white collar workers, at engineers in a aviation company, or whether it's people on the production floor. Some of our best sources at the Business Journal have been people on the production floor who know what's going on the floor. They're involved in their union. Union leadership is always important as sources. But it can be tough if you're not able to develop sources. Your sources are never going to be the CEOs. They're never going to be the marketing people. You learn as a reporter very early on, whether it's business or any profession, anything you're covering, that the key is to find people who will talk to you, who are in the know but aren't authorized to talk to you. You may have to, you have to go around the obvious people to find good sources.
What's kind of I don't know, what do you think is the key to developing sources? Just being relatable?
Relatable, not being an a-hole. That's very important. Although some people might like tell an a-hole something because they like to see them
shocked
be bulldogs.
right.
I have always found, when I was a Wichita State beat writer, I found that getting people to talk to you is a matter of being nice and oftentimes letting them know that you were interested in telling the story, whether the story was about whether it was something as simple as a basketball player's injury or this pitcher has developed a curveball that he'd never had before. And it's doing the preliminary work to set up sources that tells them you're interested, you are factual, you are accurate, you can be trusted, and that you're willing to work hard. I think working hard overcomes so much. You can't be lazy and just expect sources to come to you with information. You have to work and develop those relationships, whether it's in sports, business, or government reporting.
And probably being okay being told screw off.
Yes. Although people don't tell you to screw off as much as you think. I've had that happen to me once in the past year. It's more like you don't get calls back now.
Yeah.
Or you text a source and they just don't. It'll say delivered, but they won't respond. Leave phone messages, they won't get returned.
Like some of our outreaches.
Yeah. It must have been good.
Yeah, it happens. But it's rare when somebody will just tell you to your face, "Oh, go screw yourself."
Yeah,
it doesn't happen like that much anymore. I think we're maybe a little more civil, but I think with cell phones, with texting, with emailing, it's so easy for somebody just to choose to not to respond.
Right.
To you. Yeah, that happens more often now.
When you think of your time at the Journal, what are some entrepreneurial success stories that stick out to you that you've covered? Do you have any that stick with you?
I think it's the innovation that I'm interested in most. It's in these days it comes with technology, whether it's somebody creating an app. There's a pair of Wichita sisters. They're not located in Wichita necessarily, but they have ties to Wichita, who created an app called Quick Hire, where it not only let prospective employees see what jobs were out there, but it let the employers know who was it. Basically, it's Indeed before Indeed, I think, and they were able to localize it and specialize it to different fields and different job sectors. It's those type of folks who are able to start from scratch and make something out of nothing that stick with me. This is a big aviation and manufacturing town. We have a lot of small businesses who have made their bread and butter through being subcontractors for whatever, whether it's Learjet over the years or Textron or Spirit or Boeing. Those people, those small business owners who took chances on themselves and got their feet in the door and have just grown even incrementally over the years. Those are the good stories to tell as well. And those happen every day. I mean, those are not necessarily the stories that get the great page view numbers. It's the joke at the Business Journal is the story that's going to get the greatest amount of web traffic ever is when Coke Industries buys Quick Trip. That's going to be the greatest story ever because those are the two things that people read about most at the Business Journal is Coke Industries, what's going on with Charles Coke, what's going on with Chase Coke, and then where's the next Quick Trip going? What's it going to look like? Those are the two. When you can combine those two things.
How much do those two give you access? You meaning the Business Journal?
Chase and Charles are very walled off. They have corporate communications teams within corporate communications teams, and you think you're talking to the right corporate communications person, and it actually might be a different corporate communications team. That's something you have to get used to. It's not like in sports where you had maybe a sports information director, and that was the only person you had to get through. Yeah, you're often at their mercy for what news gets out. It's unfortunate, but it's the kind of the way it works when it comes to breaking Coke news. Coke news doesn't get broken very often. The way to get around, the way that we have broken some Coke news here recently is by the local version of the Security and Exchange Commission website. It's building permits, finding or zoning applications. What governmental things do they have to go through to get work done? Because it's not like they can skirt these things. They have to follow the laws and follow permits and things like that. So when Coke files a permit to change the zoning and land around its headquarters, nothing's being built right now, but by changing the zoning, they're saying we may do something with this land someday. And for people who like to read Coke news, they will absolutely devour that kind of news. So
did that just happen?
It's happened actually 3 times in the past 4 or 5 months.
Is it the land in between Coke and 96?
No, it's actually a wider swath of land. Coke owns a lot of land up there north of K96, a little bit south of K96 as well, but mostly north all the way up to 45th Street. They sold some land to the Classical School of Wichita, which is going to someday build a total school out there. And that story has been one of the most read stories on our website this past year, is selling that land to a private school. Couldn't have predicted that. I knew it'd be well read because it's a Coke story, but that particular story has got more page views than any other story we've done this year.
Wow.
Did I see that they bought or were trying to buy a piece of the Giants, the New York Giants?
10% of the New York Giants, I believe it's final now, was sold to Julia Koch, who was the widow of David Koch, one of the Koch brothers. David died in 2019. Julia still lives in New York with, I believe they have 2 kids. And she bought 10% of the Giants.
I wonder what 10% of the Giants goes for.
It's probably a $2 billion franchise. So what is that, $200 million?
Yeah.
Man, not bad.
Not bad. You can probably get good seats to home games, huh?
Yeah, you're not sitting in the cold.
That's right.
That's for sure.
I wonder what makes those Coke stories pop like that. I mean, there is intrigue and mysteriousness. You think that's what it is?
I think that's part of it. I know that when we write a Coke story, it's not necessarily people in Wichita reading it.
Good point.
Because I think Charles Koch's involvement in politics and philanthropy, but the politics probably mostly is what I think people have their Google searches. All good reporters have Google searches set up. So, once Coke or Coke Industries pings on a Google search, we're going to get traffic from that. Somebody reading to see what are the Cokes doing now? Something as innocent as wanting to rezone some land, but that might get more page views because people want to know what the Koch family is up to.
Right. Where they're looking up the Koch family and stumble upon your article.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the 40 under 40 listed at the Business Journal.
And we're in the process of selecting the 2026 40 under 40. And I can tell you that's a tough process.
Oh, I'm sure.
Basically, for folks who don't know, for 27 years now, we've chosen a 40 under 40, which is 40 people in Wichita who are under the age of 40 and are leaders in business, sometimes nonprofits, sometimes education, but mostly business. We've been naming those for 27 years. And we'll get 300, 400 applications a year. You have to apply. We don't go out and pick you. You have to apply. We've never just, I'm trying to think of somebody who's obviously 40. Ron Baker, let's say. Ron Baker's been in the news lately because he just changed jobs. He was at Via Christi. Of course, he's the former Shocker star and NBA player, and has come back to make his home in Wichita. And now he's changing from healthcare job to a commercial real estate job, and so we wrote about him. Ron's only in his early 30s, I would guess, and so he's obviously a 40 under 40 candidate if he chooses to apply. But he has to apply. It's not like we're just going to name him to 40 under 40. So once all those applications come in, we have a committee who will sit down and look at them. Do they have they risen through their profession at a good rate of speed? Do they do stuff in the community? Are they involved in nonprofits? What is their community service like?
Sounds like applying for college.
We ask for letters of recommendation from their CEOs. It's a pretty time-consuming process for all of us who look at all these applications. But it's kind of fun, too, because you see these are the next generation of leaders in Wichita, and these will be the people, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now who are leading some of the biggest businesses in Wichita.
Yeah, it's cool.
It really is. We like telling those stories. And once the 40 are chosen, we like to have fun with them. We shoot video. We have something special planned this year that I probably shouldn't give away, but something that we're going to try new this year with the 40 under 40, with the selections. So it's fun. And then the celebration itself is in May. We get them all together at the Marriott. And it really is it's probably the most fun party of the year because these are people who, are achieving, and we like to celebrate them. We have some fun with it.
What's the youngest 40 under 40 you've had?
I know I can tell you from looking at applications this year, we'll probably have somebody in their mid-20s who makes 40 under 40. It's rare when you have somebody
You're just fresh out of school.
Under 25 because they are so fresh out of school that unless they've created their own company and that company is making national headlines, I doubt somebody that young has done enough to be 40 under 40.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But it's also interesting because you will have people who have applied 3 or 4 years and now they're age 39. This is their last shot, and it's you kind of feel the pressure. Oh gosh, they're 39. Do they have what it takes? And we consider that a little bit, probably as much as we should. I don't know, but yeah, we do say, this is his last person's shot. So that mixes into it.
I didn't even think about that. That's like Hall of Fame voting. They phase out.
They're going to fall off the ballot after this year.
They fall off the ballot. Wow. Yeah, never thought about that. But it's a great list. I love looking at it. It's very cool.
2 years ago was the 25th anniversary of the first 40 under 40. So I had the idea, let's go back and see where are these 40 people now. And when you pick the initial 40 under 40, it's a little different because you haven't picked anybody yet. You can take the best 40 people who are under 40 and not consider who's already been picked. And so it was a who's who. I think, of course, there are some people who had moved away, who had gone on to careers elsewhere, and they were tough to find. But I eventually found all 40, got them to tell me what they're doing now, what the 40 under 40 meant to them when they were selected in 1998. That was kind of fun to work on.
Oh, that is cool. How is covering local politics these days? Because there's hot issues right now.
There is. And one of them is the sales tax referendum coming up in March. The thing that we have to make sure that we do is cover it through a business lens. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't have a business lens, we're not going to write about it. I'm trying to think of an example of something we haven't written about.
I feel like with the city and the money, so much of it can be thrown into the business bucket.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's always,
especially with what's going on now.
Right. Yeah. You have we can talk about the sales tax referendum where you have 5 buckets, and it's important for us as we're writing about them to say, what's the business angle here? And every single one of them has a business angle. You think public safety? Well, yeah, because people want to feel safe when they're going out and being consumers. Or when I'm thinking about opening a business, where do I want to locate that business? I want to locate it in a safe neighborhood. So public safety comes into play there. With homelessness and housing services, it's about, is my business being, are homeless people, standing outside my business? Are they keeping people from coming in and doing business? And if your homelessness, if you're approaching functional zero in homelessness in Wichita, maybe some of those people are becoming employable that as a small business owner I can take a chance on. So that increases the workforce. So every single one of these buckets has a business lens, and I think this sales tax referendum vote is fascinating in how quickly it got to a ballot.
Are you familiar enough to describe what this is all about?
Yes. I can tell you about the 5 buckets. I don't have off the top of my head of how much money would go to each one. Basically 5 areas. One is money, about $150 million for homelessness and housing services. Not just funding Second Light here in Wichita, but that's part of it. Public safety, which is fire and police. A lot of that has to do with equipment and new facilities. It doesn't go towards salaries. Another is property tax relief, and that's kind of the murky one where people are kind of disagreeing on how much property tax relief are we really talking about here. Mm-hmm. The 4th bucket is expanding the Bob Brown Expo Hall just south of Century 2 and expanding that off to the east, giving more convention space, because anybody you talk to, whether in government or Visit Wichita, will tell you our convention facilities are so substandard that we're losing. Susie Santo from Visit Wichita says $45 to $50 million annually that could be coming in, and people coming to Wichita, spending their tax dollars, spending nights in our hotel rooms. That's lost tourism dollars. And then and part of that is renovating Century 2, $25 million in renovations to Century 2. And that's a whole nother subject we can talk about. And then the 5th bucket is performing arts. It would be up to $75 million combined with private funding to create a new public performing arts facility, which I think we need. I don't think Century 2 is going to last very far into the 21st century as a good, high-quality performing arts venue. The people who occupy it now, symphony, music theater, Broadway shows, things like that, they'll tell you it's not cutting the mustard right now. So that's an important bucket as well.
I feel like this is a hard time to propose a sales tax increase with the water treatment plant issue and the Wichita Ice Center issue.
Bad timing.
Yes.
It is terribly bad timing for the proponents, because they want you to look at your vote and say yes or no, not based on the city's past performances in collecting Genesis Health Club's money for rent for the Ice Center, not collecting parking for Old Town. That's another thing that the city did not do well. They should have collected Old Town parking fees and rates over the years from Old Town merchants and business owners, property owners. And then, like you said, the water partners, the water treatment plant, which is still at least a year away from opening.
Yep.
More than a year delayed now. So they didn't expect a bad track record to be part of the thought process for a voter, but it's going to be.
Yes.
There are going to be people who are on the side of, I believe this is the best thing for our city. We want our city to grow. I'm willing to look past the prior the prior failings of city government. There are some on the other side who don't want to be taxed whatsoever, no matter what, no matter for what. Don't tax me. And I understand that as well. And then there's that middle ground where I can understand a property tax or a sales tax to fund these things, but boy, the city sure hasn't showed me a good track record of being able to come through, collect these things, get them to the proper buckets, or get them taken care of. I think it's that middle third, maybe more than a third of the voters, probably more than a third of the voters who are having to make that decision, who will decide the election. If they get out to vote, and this is a special election where, if you have 10 to 12% of the registered voters come out and vote, that's probably a normal turnout. it's going to be whoever gets out the vote is going to win or not win this.
In your opinion, why did the city fail on the ice rink and the water treatment plant?
I think it ultimately it lays at the feet of the city manager. It's his buck. Buck stops with him. With Genesis and with Water Partners, I am concerned. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm concerned that the lawyers who approve these contracts for the city or recommend approval, because it's the city council who ultimately approves it. I don't know that they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's on these contracts. It's like they're letting these entities get away with it with nice deals that a city really shouldn't allow.
Unintentionally?
I can't say whether it's intentional or not. I certainly hope it's not intentionally letting someone get away with a preferable contract. I can't say that. I don't know. I hope it's unintentional.
The original contract with Water Partners was awarded in 2019. And I believe it said every day late, there would be a $5,000 fine, and that $5,000 would incrementally get higher as the more delay went on. And it was capped at $5 million, correct? I believe that's right.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And so now it's delayed over a year. It's just poor timing because there's potential money that the city could be getting from that. And now they're proposing a sales tax increase. And then you have the Wichita Ice Center as well. They got $219,000 back for that when originally giving out, I believe, $750,000 for maintenance. And there wasn't much maintenance getting done there. I think the Ice Center gave one payment in 8 years back to the city. So you miss out on a couple $100,000 there. You know, conservatively, it's a couple $1 million between the two. Now they're proposing a sales tax increase. I get why voters are concerned.
Right. And there's one wild card here that we haven't mentioned. His name is Dennis Marstall. He's the new city manager. How much does a brand new city manager who didn't have a thing to do with all these past problems, how much of a pass does he get, or how much faith do voters put in him to, the buck will stop with him. Mm-hmm. It won't stop with Robert Layton. The buck will stop with him. What will voters decide? Give this guy a chance, or he's not getting my faith that he can get it done. And again, I think that's a pretty wide swath of the voters in March.
He's getting thrown right in the fire. Right in the fire. And it seems, at least from what I see online, and you'll see on like YouTube ads, the no crowd is very motivated right now.
Yeah. They are. I have been, well, I don't know. I've been a little bit surprised in the lack of aggressiveness by the Wichita Forward folks. I think it's probably coming. I think in the next 45 or so days, you're going to see, I guess I'll call it an all-out onslaught of targeted marketing for this. I think they'll try to separate the buckets as much as they can. If you are an obvious proponent of the fine arts, they're going to come to you and say, this is what a performing arts center is going to do. If you are somebody who's really keen on ending homelessness in this town, they're going to say, this is what this fund is going to do to get us to functional zero in the community. I think they're going to be as targeted as they can be. And for folks, for some folks who aren't that targeted, they're going to make the case that Wichita is a great small town, but we can be so much more. We're a great big small town, but we can be so much more. I think that's the argument that's going to be made. But there's a lot of things you're going to have to go up against.
Yep. It's really a shame because I do like the the forward thinking and what they're trying to use with this sales tax, but these past sins are just so damning that it's like, you guys have shown no fiscal responsibility here. Why do I trust you with this? Even though I do love the idea, and if these things hadn't happened, I'd be probably all for it.
Yeah, I get that. I really do. I think the Wichita Forward people, Ben Hutton, John Rolfe, Aaron Bastian, I think their hearts are good. I think there are no, the people talk about, well, they're developers, they're bank people, they're just going to lend money and build things. And
say that about anybody.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got to do it.
Right.
I'm not going to start a construction company so I can get a contract to build a performing arts center. Somebody has to get that contract, and somebody's going to make money from it. That's the way things work. I think their hearts are in the right place. I think their ambitions are genuine.
Timing's just bad.
It's really bad, and there's already concern with where your tax dollars are going.
Right.
They spent $500,000 on 2 outside bathrooms, outside toilets. That was $500,000. I think one's outside of Intrust Bank Arena, and I'm not sure where the other one is, but that was $500,000. And then they've got the sculpture, the blue swirly sculpture in front of the Wichita plant, the water plant, and the plant doesn't work. And that was $1 million for the sculpture. So there's 1.5 right there.
It will look great when it does work, won't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I
guess.
I don't know. It's just poor timing. I wonder, they tried to move it back, the election, to the Kansas primaries in August. Mm-hmm. And they said it was like $170,000 to put up a special election, which I'm sure that's right. I wonder if there was something behind that, because they know the no's are really motivated, and it would give the yeses more time to regroup. Do you think there's anything to that, or do you think I'm a conspiracy guy?
I see arguments both ways. If I were a Wichita Forward person and Mayor Wu had the votes to push it back to the August primary, I probably would not think it's the end of the world. I would take a week and regroup and think, how am I going to go about it now? I have had people on who deal with the homelessness issue that tell me it is indeed is a problem, that if they couldn't, that if the vote didn't pass in March and you couldn't start collecting sales tax by July, that Second Light would run out of money by October. And that's a genuine problem. And I think J.B. Johnston in the council meeting last week talked about that. And I think he was right that there's going to be, during the cold winter months of 2026 into 2027, there would be something like a $1.8 million to $2 million gap in funding for Second Light when they're trying to get 300, 400 homeless people in there every night and keep them warm and keep them fed. I think that would have been a genuine problem. So I will see that as a genuine concern to why you want to have that in March instead of August.
Man, if there was something in the vote that said an independent audit would be done quarterly on how much money was getting brought in and where that money is being dispersed, I'd be inclined to vote yes, because I don't live far from Broadway. I see the homelessness. It is a major, major crisis in Wichita. And if that was something that would really be addressed, I would be inclined to listen to say yes. But I don't think there will be an audit on where the money goes.
The council, which makes the final decision, which would make the final decisions on funding and oversight and creating the oversight committee, they seem to be very aggressive in saying we are going to create an oversight committee. Here's how it would be populated. 1 from each council district plus the mayor plus 8 at-large people for a 15-person committee. Here's how often they will meet. Here's how the buckets would be funded. That's all to be decided. I tend to think that if it's not going to be a part of the ballot itself, that all eyes are really going to be on them. And they know all the past problems that Genesis, the Water Partners, Old Town Parking, they know that the focus would be on them. I don't think they could get away with not being as diligent as possible. But again, I'm an optimist, and maybe that's not the case. I like to be an optimist.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out, man. It's going to be here before you know it. We're
Kind of
already getting
exciting.
It is.
Okay, it's exciting as local politics gets.
See
what happens.
Without a mayor and a council member yelling at each other or something like that. That's when it gets more interesting.
Right.
That's when you start chomping the popcorn and just watching it. I think any debates that we have leading up to March 3rd, I think the vote no opposition makes good cases. They've made cases like we've talked about, the past transgressions of city government do play a part here. And I don't think if those things were not involved at all, if they'd done right by Genesis and the Ice Center, if they'd done right by Wichita Water Partners, if Old Town parking rates and fees had been collected for 25 years like they should have been, I think the vote no would be yelling about things that they probably didn't have as much right to yell about. But then again, if someone doesn't want to be taxed, that's a perfectly valid argument. I'm taxed enough. I don't want to be taxed anymore. I certainly get that. But that's a much different argument than saying you can't trust city government not to take care of this money that would be coming in.
Right. Yeah, and people think, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And it's legit.
Fool me 4 times.
Right, fool me 4 times.
Fool me over and over.
I'm moving to Kansas City.
Where I'm going to go pay for the Chiefs.
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Kirk, that's all I had. Do you have anything for us?
No, I can't wait to watch more of these podcasts. I hope this one turns out well. Your editor has quite a job ahead of him.
You got anything, man?
I don't. We sincerely appreciate it. This is a great conversation. We love the local stuff. So you were great. Thank you.
I will smash the subscribe button when I get home.
Appreciate
Awesome.
it. We always do.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, you. I appreciate it.
Awesome.